Good morning. Welcome to Alabama. It's important that you're here. This is a historic day. This is a historic time. This is the beginning of something real and something new and something now that God is going to do.
This summer, a group called Priests for Life, headquartered in Staten Island, New York, launched what they called the Pro-Life Freedom Rides.
Freedom Rides are going to be happening in a few moments. We're going over to Atlanta, Georgia, with a number of people that are bonding together in a great sense of unity. This is all about freedom and especially now about life.
Their protest was continuing to push a line that abortion rights are a tactic of genocide in communities of color.
37% of all the abortions in this country, 37% take place on Afro-American women.
The strategy, which has been around for a while, was orchestrated by Catherine Davis, Director of Minority Outreach for Georgia State Right to Life, in a billboard campaign.
There's been more black babies aborted in America in the last 37 years than the KKK was able to kill in 144 years.
Now Father Frank Pavone is leading the charge, attempting to co-opt some of the strongest imagery of the civil rights movement to tie freedom rides to fetal rights.
And so now as we get ready to receive our instructions to go to the bus and to the caravan, let's conclude this service with the words, "He is Lord." He is Lord.
Priests for Life is an organization that at the time, young priest named Frank Pavone started to be a pro-life organization among the Roman Catholic Church. He was granted the opportunity to do this as a priest by the church. So he does have so-called permission to go ahead and do this as his vocation.
The goal seems to be very straightforward. Priests for Life wants to outlaw all abortion, but the manner in which it goes about doing it has upset an awful lot of people, including many conservative Catholics. He's not able to deal very well with the hierarchical church and likes to be much more of a loose cannon.
Even though it's called Priests for Life, the people who actually run the organization are hired by Frank Pavone, and they're lay people. One of them was a friend of his from school. Another is on the board, is a high donor to the organization who gave in 2008, I believe, almost $250,000 in stock to the organization.
They've never really, as an organization, managed to attract very many priests to get involved with them. At one stage, they claimed maybe 5,000 priest members. Well, at that time, there were more than 40,000 priests in the United States. So it was a relatively small percentage of priests.
Let's ride for freedom.
We reaffirm Black women's power and agency and our civil rights legacy.
Meanwhile, in Atlanta, protesters gather outside the Martin Luther King Center, where Priests for Life lays a wreath in an attempt to harness the King legacy to their cause.
Trust Black women! Trust Black women! I think the thing that was sort of most disconcerting for me was we shouldn't have to do this at the burial site of Dr. King. You know, I think everyone had a little bit of anxiety around how do we tastefully push back on people whose misappropriation of history will be positioned here. How do we push back but do it in a respectful manner? No one person has the right to co-opt the legacy of King. We are all benefactors, particularly African American women, who have organized for racial justice as well as women's rights.
Our bodies! Whose rights? Our rights! Whose bodies? Our bodies! Whose rights? Our rights!
This big bus rolled into town about 3:40 p.m. with this big banner all over the bus, Pro-Life Freedom Ride. And I mean, it was obvious that they had spent thousands of dollars on these theatrics. And so we were quite surprised when the people started disembarking from the bus, and they were all white. It was like there were maybe 4 black people with them, but it was like 100 or so people in cars and who had followed the bus. And it was an all-white demonstration at the Martin Luther King Center. It just was surreal.
We shall overcome.
And then it really took a whole nother surreal leap into fantasy world when these white people started singing "We Shall Overcome." obviously oblivious to the irony of what they were singing and to whom they were singing it.
Father Pavone does have some King family support. Alveda King, niece to Dr. King, is on payroll at Priests for Life as Director of African American Outreach.
If Frank Pavone is anything, he's an opportunist. And once he saw that she had a resonance among a certain community, he felt the need to exploit that.
I think because she has the King name and she travels the country, people automatically assume, well, because her last name is King, she has been given some type of authority. And the reality is, for those of us who live in Atlanta who have to engage the King family on a regular basis, we know that that is not the case. She is not some ordained benefactor who was given this mantle to carry instead of his children.
I think the saddest thing I know about Alveda King is that she had 2 abortions herself, which she loudly confesses to, and then says, but she doesn't want anybody else to have one. So you're going to take advantage of a legal right and a medical service that you don't want anyone else to access. That feels like the ultimate in hypocrisy.
Black women do not kill black people. That's right.
The activists were happy with how things turned out that day. They'd beaten back another attack on abortion rights and made the point that self-determination for women around pregnancy is just part of a broader picture of issues.
But at the end of the day, we made our point, which was you should trust black women. We don't kill our children. We love our children. We fight for our children. But we believe in fighting for our children, not just through the 9 months to make sure that a woman's right to birth justice is ensured. We want to make sure that women have the necessary supports to be good parents, that schools are funded, that health care is offered, that women and families are raised out of poverty to be effective mothers, family members, and at large a community.
It was clear that they don't have a base in the African American community like they claim to. And so I think the pro-freedom ride fizzled out.
But Father Pavone thought the event was a success, and he has more freedom rides scheduled. He has the money for these and for other events as well.
The total assets for Priests for Life per year is around $10 million. This is not an unsubstantial amount of money. And one of the things that it helps to perpetuate is the infrastructure for some of these other ministries. There's a crisis pregnancy center network. There's a organizing people who regret their abortions. That's called Silent No More. And all of these are connected to Priests for Life.
And while his critics might call him a charlatan,
he's compared himself to Mother Teresa and some Catholic martyrs throughout history, and it really is absurd.
no one in the pro-choice community wants to underestimate Pavone or his collaborators.
Frank Pavone has got a long history with Flip Benham, and he claims that Mr. Benham is not into violence and that his connections with Operation Rescue are entirely on a collegial level. But it seems to me that his long history and his unwillingness to condemn the violence of organizations like that suggests that he is quite willing to condone their activities if it furthers his cause.
Flip Benham and Father Pavone may not seem to have that much in common, except for being very strong anti-abortion activists. But a very interesting development occurred around the Roe of Roe v. Wade. Jane Roe was a pseudonym for the person who was the plaintiff in that case, and the real name of that person was Norma McCorvey. Now, she became a target of the right wing to try to convert her to the anti-abortion movement, and they were successful. In 1995, Flip Benham, the head of Operation Save America, baptized Norma McCorvey, and in an unusual twist, in 1998, Father Frank Pavone baptized Norma McCorvey. So first she became an evangelical Christian, and then she became a Roman Catholic. Everybody was covering all of their bases.
And so the battleground widens. Billboards have spread as far as Texas. More freedom rides are scheduled, and it's all too likely that the issue will be raised as a convenient wedge issue in the 2010 midterm elections.
Well, one thing that this billboard campaign and the legislative session and now our fight with the people at the King Center has shown us is that we need a long-term response to these people because they're never going to retreat. They're just going to regroup and keep coming back year after year. And so a couple of weeks ago, we had a national meeting of leading black women's organizations, and we formed a coalition called Trust Black Women. And what we're going to do is work all around the country to defeat legislation at the state level, to work nationally.
Well, what we're doing, we're organizing first to let black women know, trust yourself, trust your mind, trust your body, trust your instinct. Secondly, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You have nothing to feel bad about. Thirdly, that you do have your best interests at heart. You have the best interests of your children at heart. You have the best interests of your family at heart and the best interests of the community. And that the other thing is we have to stop being silent. We have to stop participating in the conspiracy of silence around the fact that abortion is a necessary part of reproductive health and reproductive life.
Heidi Williamson, a younger member of the group, still can't shake the personal outrage she felt on that day of the protests in Atlanta.
It's so weird. I haven't been back to this exact spot since Coretta died. So it's a little emotional, or more than I thought it would be. Because I never had the opportunity to sort of touch and feel Martin, but I did have the opportunity to sort of sit with her and touch her. And they should be ashamed. She was the embodiment of the beloved community and really wanted all women to thrive. She wanted all communities to thrive. And until she died, she was committed to the people who were considered the most vulnerable. How anyone could want to corrupt something that pure is just outrageous. So I'm a bit angry that such a sacred place had to be defiled the way it was yesterday.